It usually happens when your guard's down. You're doing something ordinary, chopping vegetables, driving, holding a baby, scrolling through your phone, and then bam, out of nowhere, your brain drops a sentence you never asked for. Something violent, inappropriate, completely out of character. You freeze for half a second, your stomach flips, and before you can even process it, the question shows up. Why did I think that? Why would my own mind do that? Maybe it's a flash of an image, pushing someone, crashing the car, shouting something awful. You don't even want to picture it, but the harder you try not to, the stronger it sticks. And then the wave of discomfort hits. You look around, almost guilty, like someone might have seen inside your mind. It feels strange, right? And for a moment, you wonder if anyone else has these little mental glitches. You never say it out loud because how would that even sound? Hey, sometimes my brain throws horror movie scenes at me while I'm buttering toast. It sounds ridiculous. So you just keep it to yourself, brush it off, pretend it never happened. See, the brain is strange that way. It doesn't ask permission before it shows you things. It throws up fragments, flashes, possibilities, most harmless, some not so much. And if you've ever wondered whether this only happens to you, it doesn't. It happens to everyone. Every mind has its darker corners, places it doesn't visit on purpose. And sometimes, for reasons we don't yet understand, those corners open up for a second. So maybe the question isn't what's wrong with me? Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's what is my mind trying to show me? You've probably noticed how your mind always wants control. It likes to plan, to predict, to know what's coming next. And when it can't, when life feels uncertain or heavy, it starts doing something strange. It begins to speak in symbols. And sometimes, those symbols arrive as thoughts that don't even feel like yours. Sigmund Freud was one of the first to really pay attention to this. He called it the return of the repressed. Basically, it means everything you try to push away, your fears, your anger, the memories you can't look at directly, doesn't actually disappear. It just hides. And when your mind gets tired or anxious or overstimulated, those buried pieces start leaking through. Not as memories, but as flashes. A violent image, a strange impulse, a sentence that makes you stop and think, where did that even come from? Freud spent half his career proving that the human mind is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship run by chaos. There's the id, that impulsive part that wants everything. Then the superego, the inner judge that punishes every imperfection. And in the middle, the ego, you, just trying to keep both sides from tearing the house down. So when a disturbing thought appears, it's often the id whispering, imagine it, and the superego shouting, how dare you? You panic not because it's real, but because it feels forbidden. See, the mind can't always tell the difference between imagination and intention. That's why intrusive thoughts feel so personal. They're not your desires, they're collisions between impulse and morality. Freud also described something darker, the death drive, or thanatos. He believed there's a part of the psyche that doesn't crave pleasure or progress. It craves stillness. It wants everything, including suffering, to stop. That's why, in moments of exhaustion, your brain might whisper things like, what if I crashed the car? Or what if I just let go? Not out of wish, but out of fatigue. It's the mind's distorted way of saying, I'm tired. Then Jung came along and took it even deeper. He called it the shadow. That's the side of you that carries everything you've learned to hide. Your jealousy, your rage, your unspoken desires, your grief. You know, all the emotions that weren't welcome when you were growing up. You probably already know what that feels like. Biting your tongue when you want to speak, forcing a smile when you want to scream. That's how shadows are born. Think of it like this. Your mind is a house with a lot of rooms. Every time you deny a feeling or memory, you push it into one of those rooms and lock the door. You might even forget what you put inside, but the things you lock away don't stay quiet. They knock, they whisper through the cracks, and sometimes they slip under the door as images, impulses, or thoughts that feel alien. But it's not a monster, it's just a part of you that's been living in the dark too long. Now, modern psychology has a simpler explanation. Cognitive theory calls them automatic thoughts. Reflexes your brain fires when it senses danger. Lightning-fast interpretations that appear before you've even had a chance to think. You drop a glass and immediately hear, I ruin everything. A friend doesn't text back, and your brain quietly murmurs, "They're tired of you." You pass a stranger on the street and suddenly imagine something violent, absurd, or shameful. And before you know it, you're spiraling. Because the thought isn't the problem, it's the meaning you attach to it. There's also cognitive dissonance involved. It's that annoying tension between what you believe and what you think. You tell yourself, "I'm a good person," and then your mind flashes something dark. The contradiction stings. You start arguing with yourself, pleading for control over a system that was never designed to be fully controlled. Your moral compass and your intrusive imagination start playing tug of war, and you're the rope in the middle. Sometimes intrusive thoughts can be a part of the pure O, short for purely obsessional obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's when the mind gets trapped not in behaviors, but in thoughts. You don't check the door or wash your hands, you check your conscience, over and over. You analyze every mental image, every word that flashes by. You replay moments from your day like courtroom evidence, trying to prove that you're not the kind of person who would ever think such things. But the irony is that very checking keeps the loop alive. The harder you fight the thought, the deeper it digs in. Because the mind doesn't understand, don't think about it. It only understands, this must be important. Psychologists call this thought-action fusion, the belief that thinking about something is as bad as doing it. It's a cruel trick of empathy and anxiety mixed together. You fear harm because you care about not causing it. There's also a notion of the illusion of control. It's what keeps the anxious brain in motion. The idea that if you think enough, analyze enough, repent enough, you'll finally be free. But freedom doesn't come from controlling your mind. It comes from realizing you were never supposed to win that war in the first place. So maybe that's what modern psychology has been trying to tell us. That sometimes the mind isn't trying to destroy you. It's just trying too hard to protect you. It's throwing shadows to test how much light you can stand. And maybe that means you're not broken. You're simply awake in a brain that feels too much and wants more than anything to understand itself. There's a kind of fear that doesn't come from danger. It doesn't come from what might happen to you. It comes from realizing what could. Philosophers like Kierkegaard called it dread, the fear of freedom. That strange dizziness you feel when you're standing on a high balcony and your mind whispers, "What if I jumped?" Not because you want to, but because you could. That's the moment when the human mind looks at its own power and trembles. You're not afraid of falling. You're afraid of knowing that the choice is yours. Sartre called this the vertigo of possibility. He said freedom is not comfortable. It's intimidating. Because every choice you make kills 1,000 others that might have been. Every path you take leaves behind an entire universe of what-ifs, and somewhere deep in that awareness, intrusive thoughts are born. Not as threats, but as proof. Proof that you are capable of imagining both light and darkness, creation and destruction, love and its opposite. You know, most people think intrusive thoughts are flaws, like cracks in the mind's surface. But what if they're evidence of consciousness itself? The brain doesn't just record reality, it invents it. It simulates every possible outcome, even the ones you'd never choose. Nietzsche understood this when he wrote, "When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." People often think that line is a warning, but he wasn't telling us to look away from the darkness. He was telling us to learn how to look at it without falling in. Because ignoring the abyss doesn't make it disappear, it just waits, and when you finally face it, it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to show you something about your own depth. Camus went even further. He said the universe itself is indifferent. That meaning isn't given to you. You have to invent it. And maybe that's what intrusive thoughts remind us of. That the human mind is so vast it can hold both creation and chaos at once. That to be conscious is to see everything, even what you wish you didn't. And to keep living anyway. Maybe that's why the thoughts feel so heavy, because they're reminders that you are free, and freedom, as philosophers eventually realized, is the heaviest thing a human mind can carry. So when your mind conjures something horrific, or taboo, or unthinkable, it's not because you want it, it's because you're capable of envisioning everything. That's what makes us human. That's what makes the mind both a miracle and a menace. You've probably noticed something by now. The more you understand your mind, the less it scares you. The truth is, most people never look inward. They stay distracted enough to never hear themselves. But you question, you notice, you analyze, And that awareness, even when it hurts, is a kind of strength most people never reach. Because the moment you can observe your thoughts, you've already separated from them. You're not the storm, you're the sky watching it pass. And that's what real consciousness is, seeing your own darkness without mistaking it for who you are. And that's really where it starts to change, when you stop fighting every thought and just start seeing it. Because thoughts on their own are harmless. They only gain power when you start treating them like evidence. When you start saying, "What does this mean about me?" instead of, "That was just a thought." Psychologists call this cognitive diffusion, learning to step back and notice your thoughts without becoming them. It's not about controlling your mind, it's about recognizing that you're separate from it. You're the observer, not the noise. When you stop trying to push thoughts away, they lose their grip. They pass through like background chatter, strange, random, sometimes dark, but never dangerous. Because the truth is, every brain produces nonsense sometimes. It's what brains do. It's not a sign of who you are. It's just proof that your mind is active, creative, and constantly generating possibilities. So when that next thought shows up, the weird one, the scary one, the one that makes you question yourself, you don't have to analyze it or erase it. Just acknowledge it. You remind yourself, hey, it's just a thought, and move on. You don't have to believe it, argue with it, or push it away. Just notice it and let it exist for a moment. Some people find it helps to give their thoughts a shape, to picture them as clouds drifting by, or balloons floating into the sky. Others imagine gathering their thoughts, setting them gently aside, and telling themselves, I'll deal with this tomorrow if it still matters. You can even give your intrusive thoughts a name, something silly, something that makes them less intimidating. It's a quiet reminder that they're not you, they're just mental noise passing through. That's how they start to fade, not by force, but by indifference. They disappear when you stop arguing with them, because the more you notice, the less they control you. And the moment you realize that, something shifts. You stop being afraid of your thoughts, and your thoughts finally stop trying to scare you.